very much. And I'm not trying to talk like I'm alone in a room when I say them. I mean you. I mean us. Really, I mean us. And to me, at a certain point, I stopped caring about who becomes the president of the United States, in that all I can do is control my one vote. That's the only vote I want control of. So I vote, and then I'm done. And whoever becomes president, eventually the rubber meets the road, and they gotta get to work. But I don't think about that too much, because I've always gotten, like I said, my marching orders come from this. This is what I believe, and I have a Lincoln-esque sense of community, which also to me is the idea of punk rock, that we're kind of sort of in this together, where we don't have to necessarily hop into each other's laps and have a group hug and lock arms and rock gently side to side singing Michael Row Your Boat Ashore. But the idea that we're so isolated and you know, the polarization of America right now, nothing gets done when people are all slammed up on this side of the room and everyone's slammed up on the other side of the room. There's this big vacancy in the middle and the mice are eating the cheese and nothing's getting done. And that, to me, that's too bad, because it's a great country and there's a lot that needs to be done. And for the last couple of years, we've just been spinning our wheels. And that kind of inactivity in this country, while the rest of the world is getting traction, they are moving down the road. Every single day we argue with all the vitriol and all this and that and all the people yelling at each other, we lose traction in the world and we lose our shot at the future. And as you live, as you breathe, the present is gone. It's only about the future. And so when I see people coming down on teachers, well, they're a bunch of leeches. They only work 9 months a year. 9 months of a teacher's life is like 20 months of anyone else's life. I mean, yeah. And so this contempt for education in this country, when you hear someone on some news station saying, well, they're the liberal elite, they use polysyllabic words in proper context. Like people with an education are flouncing Nelly boys, when half of the people that they actually like are lawyers who are trained at Princeton, Harvard, etc., like Bill O'Reilly, who's a very smart guy. Well, you're just a flouncing Nelly boy intellectual, like you, and he is. And so this is where I lose all of my patience. So anyway, here's what's been happening on this tour. I've been going to cities, and after 31 years of touring America, I figured I would have been to every capital city in the United States, and seemingly I have not. And so the other day I was in beautiful Juneau, Alaska for the first time. If you've ever been to Alaska, it's like another world. It's so incredibly gorgeous. The people are fantastic. And the king crab, you just move there just for the crab. And Juneau was great. Pierre, South Dakota, it spells Pierre. Don't say that when you're there, because the safeties come off the weapons. That sounds a little too French to me. So it's Pierre, South Dakota. And what you don't know, it escaped national news somehow, but last year, Pierre, South Dakota experienced a massive flood, and a lot of their city was underwater for about 100 days. And I walked around parts of the city with the mayor of Pierre, South Dakota, and an amazing woman. And we actually planted a tree together near the city's band shell that was up to here with water last summer, or the summer of last year. And so we planted a tree, and just because it was there and we planted it together, like here's a woman in high heels and a business dress shoveling dirt into it was great. And I actually hugged the tree. I hugged the tree because that's the kind of person I am, a patchouli slathered, hacky sack kicking tree hugging person, looking for a dog to pat. And my hopelessly naive futuristic dreams full of science and solar panels easily dismissed as mere pseudo-intellectual twaddle. But I really think that I'm on to something. So anyway, some of these capital cities are so far apart from one another, we cannot get there with the Bon Jovi Mobile, the Def Leppard Express, my rolling carbon footprint, which is befouling the atmosphere outside this building right now, right next to the government mule, Bon Jovi Mobile, that is befouling the air. So we are in tandem, befouling the air together. And so usually we can go night to night, get to the next place. This whole capitalism jazz has us very geographically distant from some of these cities. Some of the capital cities in some of your wonderful American states are not close to anything, anywhere. You try driving across Montana. You can drive across Montana for like a year and a half. Where are you? You're still in Montana. It's a beautiful piece of real estate, but there's just a whole lot of it. So every once in in a while, we need to leave the Bon Jovi mobile behind and take to the air for the Capitalism 2012 tour to go on. And such was the case the other day in Carson City, Nevada. Did the show. Never been to that place before, Carson City. Beautiful, great people. I hope they let me come back. Finish the show, get back on the Bon Jovi mobile, drive to the Reno, Nevada International Airport to deploy into the airport to fly to Phoenix, Arizona for the next show as the bus limps terrestrially down the road to Salt Lake City, Utah to meet us in 48 or 72 hours from then. And so myself, road manager Ward, and cameraman Thad, these three adult men bereft of sleep, and we live in the adult world, you and I. We are often deprived of sleep, yet required to do real big adult stuff all day. I've slept an hour and a half. I'm going to do 8 or 9 hours at the office. I'm going to pick up my kids. I'm going to make food. I'm not going to crash my car into a tree. I'm not going to brush my teeth with shaving cream. I am going to stay up, which means you have to incinerate your guts with one of those ridiculous energy drinks, which just takes your whole body, just goes... But that's the world that some of us live in. So we go into the airport, we check in our gear, and the three of us are just like cross-eyed from exhaustion. Because you get off the stage, you're wound up, it takes you a while to get to sleep, and like at 05:30 hours, we're up and at it on our way to Arizona. So none of us are that into it, as you can imagine. And so we dump the gear and we get through, and now we're standing in the line to meet TSA and be patted down to get on board. And it's a line of adults looking down at their Blackberries, thinking about their day. A long flight, to a rental car, to a hotel, to a meeting, back to the hotel, lose the rental car, don't sleep, back on an airplane, come back, 04:30 hours, the kid's up, he wants to talk, stay up, go back to work, energy drink, adult hell. That's us, that's the way we live. And that's what we live in all the time. And so there's all these adults in line, like looking down with their communication devices, like, hate my life, hate my life. You can hear hair growing of deep introspection of adults in the early morning hours. All of us are philosophers at that time of the morning. You go way deep into your mind. What does it all mean? Why is there life? Whose idea was this? And you're way out there. So anyway, I'm in line. I know what I need to do. I'm getting my boots unlaced. I'm getting ready to pull the laptop out of the backpack and divest myself of all metal liquids, etc. And I see at my 2 o'clock, I see there's a video monitor on, and there's a woman's face on it, and she's speaking to me, the American people. Who is it? It's Janet Napolitano, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and she's giving me a lesson on how to take my shoes off, lose my cell phone, watch, and wallet, belt, etc., and go through and expedite my progress through the metal detector and thus keep the traffic flowing. Not to disrespect the good lady, but I've been to an airport before, a lot of them, and I know what I need to do. As you've been to an airport, no one needs to tell you what you need to do. And so I tune her out, not out of disrespect, but like, it's 06:50 hours, I got this. And so as I'm unlacing the boots, I stand up, unlaced, ready to take them all off, hurl them onto the belt, and try and pass for normal as I go through the metal detector. At that time, I hear a man right behind me. I could almost feel his breath on the back of my neck. That's how close he was to me. And he was using the entire room as his auditorium. He was not talking to his friend next to him. He must be traveling alone. Because if you talk as loud as this guy did to someone standing next to you, you would blow up his eardrum. He is using the entire room to get attention and perhaps incite confrontation. He's obviously looking at the woman's face on the screen. And in the loudest possible elderly male voice, he says, "Well, look at that dyke on a bike." And you hear this collective inhalation of air from everyone. Really? It wasn't the content of what he said. It was the dB level with which he said it. Because at that hour, anything loud sounds like 5,000 bottles smashing in your brain. And I was like, please stop making loud sounds. And he goes on. He goes into this weird lecture about 9/11 and how dare this woman show her face on TV. And then it comes to an end like 8 or 12 seconds later. And he gets no reaction from any of us. Although he has no reaction from us, he has gained the attention of all the TSA officers. Because like, what's interesting in this line? A bunch of grumbling adults or the guy with a real big mouth? Because usually in those lines, I'm what's getting the attention. And you see them talking to each other. My God, Rollins, he's so short. Everybody taller. Look how gray he is. Damn, he's all breaking jingles. Sons of Anarchy. Right on. So usually that's my morning, but on this day it's all about the guy with the rap. And so I throw my boots on the belt, backpack, whole 9 yards, go through the metal detector, pass for normal, and I'm reassembling myself on the other side. And as I'm doing that, I hear a woman behind me addressing the elderly white male with the big mouth and his big kick-ass opinion about the dyke on a bike, which he's actually done twice now in line. He rewound the tape and let it rip again to see if he could get a reaction. He got nothing. And I hear her say, in a very professional, the most gentle possible tone, she said, "Sir, is everything okay?" Which is pretty damn cool for her to say. And instead of playing the old man card that Clint Eastwood did after he had his weird comedy routine with the empty chair, he is out promoting a film. So about 48 hours after he had this not so funny comedy routine with the empty chair, he's doing entertainment television to promote his film. And so they said, "Mr. Eastwood, you're a Hollywood icon, great actor, great director, and you had a weird thing with the chair the other night at the RNC. It's gone viral. It's like a smash hit single on the internet. Can you talk about that just a little bit?" And Mr. Eastwood, I think, is about as honest as the day is long. He'll tell you what's on his mind. You might not dig it, but he'll tell it to you. And he said, you get to a certain age and you don't care what anyone thinks about what you say, and you say exactly what's on your mind, which basically says to me, "Old man time, old man time. Hey kids, look at this. Hey, I'm a crazy old man. I'm 4 early bird breakfasts away from the Last Supper." And so, woo-hoo! And then he said a few days after that, he did another interview, they said, "So the other day you said you get to a certain age, you say whatever you want, that's pretty cool. Do you care to elaborate on that?" He goes, "Yeah, you get to a certain age, you say any damn thing you want, and the Romney Party was dumb enough to hire me in the first place. Wahoo! Old man time!" And the best part about all of that is, he's voting for Mitt Romney, which basically says, like, "I'm voting for you, dummy! Wahoo! Old man, hey, look at this!" And so that's just funny to me. And like, he's got a lot of truth. You might not dig it, but he'll lay it on you. And so I think that's what the old man should have done in that situation. "Sir, is everything okay?" "Hey, don't bother, worrying about me. I'm just a crazy old man. That whole dyke on a bike thing I just said at the top of my lungs 18 seconds ago, I'm just a crazy old man who just loaded his pants. Hey, the Metamucil's working. Old man time, I'll be dead soon. Who cares? I'm not a threat to anyone. Let me pass." Instead of doing that, he tripled down on the whole dyke on a bike thing, perhaps thinking that if I say it with more passion, with more emphasis, with more volume, they'll see it my way. They'll see that I really believe this whole dyke on a bike thing. So he pulls the string out of his chest for like round 3. "Well, that damn dyke on a bike!" And he got a few more words out, and all of a sudden they found myriad objects in his carry-on luggage that required great scrutiny and inspection. And he was taken away. And so I turned around to look at the guy with the mouth. And he was what he sounded like, an elderly Caucasian man, soft. That describes Clint Eastwood. It describes my dad, who is probably about 85 now. I don't know, but guess what? This is the funny part. He's probably breathing right now in the state of Virginia, crouching low in the weeds on this beautiful autumn night, clutching his AR-15, waiting for Sean Hannity to issue him this next directive. That's my dad. Yep, that's my dad. He and I agree on nothing. I haven't seen him since like 1748, and my life is so much better. And so I saw that this is just some old man with a big mouth, and I got my gear together, and I went and sat and waited for the flight. And eventually I'm sitting in a seat in the back of the plane with the dogs in the mail, and I'm going to Phoenix, Arizona. And as we are in these early morning hours, you sink back into adult introspection, and you're thinking to yourself, I thought about that guy all the way to Arizona. It's not the longest flight, but I thought about him all the way. And this is mere projection, in that this is what I think happens to you, which is a bit much, but don't get angry at me. I think that as we grow older, we get more information. In that, when you are 20-something, 30-something, you don't think the way you did when you were 4. Like when you lost the game of pin the tail of the on the donkey at your birthday party, and you cried and hyperventilated for 17 years, or is that just me? I mean, like, you know what I mean? You're a brat, you act out. And then when you get a little older, you lose at something, you're like, well, that's life, you lose it, okay. And so as you go around the track, you pick up more information. You get more on the palate. You get more you can bring to the table. You've lost friends. You maybe lost your parents. You've broken up. The girl or guy you thought you were going to be with for the rest of your life, guess what? It didn't work out. And the heartbreak was unbelievable. You've lost friends. They've been killed. And it hurts. And so as you get older, it seems to me, with life experience, I'm just talking about sheer laughs around the track. It seems to me, if your mind is a lens, like a camera's lens, it seems to me it would get wider and wider as you got older, to the point to where by the time you're 70-something, the lens is going backwards, so you can almost see behind you. You can see things before they happen, which makes it harder for you to sit in judgment of other people. Like when you're young and someone gives you a mean review in their fanzine, I'm going to come over to your house and I'm going to... And now people rip me a new one in magazines all the time. And I just say, well, what do you think of that, huh? I think it's the First Amendment. And I think that it doesn't hit me where I live. And I think it doesn't alter any course that I'm going to take. And I think I'm still going to hit stage at 8 o'clock and talk insanely fast for a long time. I think that's what I'm going to do. And you get to write your thing, I get to say my thing, and long may both of us wave, Mr. Limbaugh. I mean, you know what I mean? Well, he calls my president a African-American, which I think is really awful. But, you know, he gets to do it. And I'll be the first on the line to defend his right to do it, as objectionable as I find that kind of thing to be. And so it seems to me, when you get 70-something, as this man was, or 80-something like my father might be if he's still alive, it seems to me you'd be like levitating off the ground, floating like some cool old hipster Buddha. Like, you know, everything would be cool because you've seen everything, and you've been, you know, any jerk you encounter, you were that person 2 weeks ago, so you realize I can't judge that person too hard because I've been that pain in the ass like 2 fiscal quarters ago. Yet this guy, instead of going wider, he's narrowed his focus, and now he's 70-some years of age, and he has put himself in a dead end of being the dyke on a bike guy. And I would never dare tell you what to do or how to think. I'm no professor, I'm no doctor, I'm just your pal, Henry, aging in front of you. But it seems to me that if we're going to be smart, switched on, and to a certain extent scientifically inclined, there's a bit of responsibility that comes with that. And how do I back that up? It's what Lincoln told me in the year of 1838. I'll tell you about that in a second. But it seems to me, this is a young century. You and I have one thing that we all can agree on. We're not getting out of this century alive. We're all dead before this one is over. I want this to be the century that is talked about centuries from now. I want this to be the century that is taught in university classrooms, that this will be the century that they look back on as the one that was the heroic, charismatic one that turned great corners, made great strides, were bold and daring, and saved the planet. This will be the century they look back and go, well, that was the planet, well, that was the century that made war an irrelevant thing of the past. They made negotiation and peaceful ways to resolve conflict the way to go. They are the ones that invented the Ramones' sonic cloud that hangs over planet Earth, allowing any Earthling to take their phone-driven communication device and think of the one Ramones song they don't have, hold it to the night sky, bam, to have it magically uploaded to said communication device. This is the century that invented the software that allows you to think of the pizza of your dreams, close your eyes and see it in your mind, open any window in your domicile to see it float in through the window, hover in front of you, and just land gently on a dinner plate. This is the century that built the largest stereo system in the world with 300-mile wide speakers aimed straight up at the sky, playing P-Funk records year in, year out, until travelers from other galaxies heard the funk throwdown and finally landed their crafts. And that is why you and I get to enjoy the multi-galaxy P-Funk Ramones Demo 24/7 block party that is the funnest thing ever. And that is why in the league of galaxies that we exist in, that planet Earth is regarded as the blue-green Mardi Gras fun ball spinning gently in space. And that would be us. And it seems to me there comes some responsibility. If you know stuff, you got to carry some weight. You can't say, I'm on my own, you're on your own, I've got mine, and my Atlas Shrugged copy of this crappy book says I... That to me is so damn cowardly. And I can live with the 10th Amendment, states' rights, I got it, but I don't think any of those borders are etched in stone in that. I came here from North Carolina at some odd hour this morning. I didn't need a passport to come here, and I don't want to have to use a passport to get in from some other state to another state. And so I think there is a little bit of community that happens. Lincoln and punk rock instructs me that this is true. And so there it comes with it some responsibility. And so if you're going to be the dyke on a bike guy or gal person, when you're 70, you're not going to be part of the future. You're not going to be effective to get anyone up the road. That is not what you teach your children. When you're, when you're 11 years old, you go hang out with your weird uncle, and if he sits you down like, you know what women are? They're dykes on bikes. No, that can't be right. I mean, I used to hang out with my mother 5 days a week and my father 2 days a week per the divorce court agreement. And so 5 days a week with Iris. To the left of my mother's like Joan Baez and a wall. And so we enjoyed Mozart, Stravinsky, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, Barbara Streisand, show tunes, and all kinds of stuff. And we read a lot of books. My mom taught me to read before I was in school. And so as I was in school, we're reading Great Expectations aloud to one another. Did I understand what the book was about? No, but I learned how to say words and read them, and it was easy, and I got it. It was fun. The rest of my life in school, science, math, and the rest of it, was a wreck. English always came easy. And so it was like 5 days a week of like books, art, culture, no TV with Iris, and then 2 days of fear with Dad. And he would get me up on Saturday morning with my little overnight bag with like underwear and socks. I'd hop into his massive bit of American steel, and we would drive around the Washington, D.C. area as my father looked down with mild disgust at this twitching, Ritalin-addled monkey boy that was like next to him. And every once in a while, we'd come up to intersections, red light, like a quarterback before the snap. No cops, pull out that cold can of beer. And every once in a while, he'd extol the wisdom. Hey, yes, Dad? Never trust a chink. Never trust a chink. I am 9, you are ruining my life. And someday, I would get dropped off, and I would go back into the apartment, and my mom, well, what did you learn from your father this weekend? Well, apparently chinks aren't to be trusted. Henry, I'm just a messenger. What else? Well, apparently all black men fall under the racial epithet umbrella of being named Marvin Food Stamp. And apparently their main thing in life is to get free stuff, be in warm rooms with loose shoes, and not aspire to anything. Henry! It's just what the angry man said. And so thankfully, I didn't go that way. I went the way of Iris, Bob Dylan, and rock and roll, and actually Lincoln. And so it seems to me that you and I have some weight to carry. I keep mentioning Lincoln. Okay, here's why I think I'm right about bearing some responsibility. In the year of 1838, Abraham Lincoln, one of his first speeches is called the Speech for the Perpetuation of Our Political Institutions, or the Speech to the Young Men's Lyceum. And he was a guy 28, about to turn 29. He turned 29 that year on February 12th. And so he made this speech, and he was reacting to violence that had been happening in Missouri. And the violence specifically was some gamblers had been hanged, and an African-American man had been hanged and his body was burned. And Lincoln was horrified at what he saw as rioting in the streets and the destabilization of peace, tranquility, and democracy. And so he wrote this marvelous speech, like 3,700 words. And here's a guy with less than 1 year of formal schooling, yet some of Lincoln's sentences are so damn strong and eloquent and well architected. You can string them across a ravine and drive a truck across them and they will not move. I mean, he's a little over my head most of the time, but I can kind of sort of hold on to some of it. And I read a lot of Lincoln just because I think he pulled for all of us, in that I can't find the partisan lean of Abraham Lincoln when I read him. He just seems like a common sense, middle of the road guy, like let's all get up the road and let's be good to one another. And so at the beginning of this speech, I think in an effort to butter up his young audience, he said, we find ourselves in peaceful possession of the fairest portion of the earth, regards extent of territory, fertility of soil, and salubrity of climate. We find ourselves under the government of a system of political institutions, conducing more essentially to the ends of civil and religious liberty than any of which the history of former times tells us. We, when mounting the stage of existence, found ourselves the legal inheritors of these fundamental blessings. And the first part is a gorgeous description of, well, he could be describing Virginia. I'm not sucking up, I'm just saying. Beautiful sky, room to move, salubrity of climate pertaining to health, and fertile soil. And that describes a lot of America. And then he said you live with a wonderful representative, transparent democracy that serves you as you serve it. But there's some responsibility, and I think the wording is fantastic. Lincoln, I think, really paid attention to what he was saying. Because as you know, a lot of people ended up hating his guts. So I think he chose his words carefully. He's also a lawyer, so he's got a little bit of that stank on him. Anyway, he said we became the legal inheritors, which means legal, which there's some obligation. You signed on the dotted line by being a resident of the United States of America, and you're subject to its jurisdiction there, and so there's that. But then he said you're the legal inheritor, and that to me is the most important word, in that you certainly didn't invent the earth, but you didn't invent democracy. You didn't come up with the Bill of Rights. You didn't write the Declaration of Independence. You didn't write the preamble to the Constitution. And he describes our ancestors as the fathers, and he said how nobly they carried out this task. If you're the inheritor and not the inventor, you have some responsibility. You can squander that which was placed in your lap, or you can do something good with it. And I think the duty is for us to upgrade it, leave it clean, leave it operational, efficient, for the next generation, so they can be the legal inheritors of these fundamental blessings they got from us. So they can feel a little bit of pressure to kick it up several notches, make it more peaceful, more efficient, cheaper to run, better for all, benefiting the many, e pluribus unum, out of many, one, and get us up the road. And that to me says it all. He says, you got responsibility, you inheritor, you, and I take that as a call to duty, to not be too prejudicial against my fellow Americans, no matter what white power group they adhere to or how they vote. In that, I think any neo-Nazi in America is perhaps just one Al Green record away from seeing it my way. And that it could just be a good person with that information. So they don't need a shovel to the head as much as they need reason. And so then he asked his young audience, what would the enemy of America look like? How will we be brought down? And he said, what will the enemy look like? How do we recognize it? How do we fortify against it? And he threw out a question to his young audience. He said, shall we expect some transatlantic giant to step the ocean and crush us at a blow? Never, said Lincoln. He said that not all the armies of Asia, Africa, and Europe combined, with the treasures of the world in their military chest, our own accepted, with a Bonaparte as a commander, could not by force drink from the Ohio River or lay a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years. And I'm not here to interpret Lincoln. You heard what I said, and that's probably within a comma of being exactly what is on that thing. But maybe he's saying, we'll give the rest of the world, all of you, the rest of the world, all those continents, you can get together, and you can have all your accumulated treasures with Bonaparte, who was seen in those times as a supreme military strategist. In fact, some of you Civil War buffs know that Napoleonic strategy was taught at West Point and utilized in the Civil War. And so he's saying, the rest of the world, come on with it. We'll give you 1,000 years. All the ammo and stuff and treasure are accepted so we can defend ourselves. We'll give you Napoleon as the leader, and we'll give you 1,000 years to figure out how to defeat us. In 1,000 years, basically, you'll come in, you'll fail. You'll fall back, you'll redraw your maps, you'll re-strategize, you'll breed more cannon fodder, and you'll come back energized, knowing the terrain, and we're going to kick you out again. And then 600 years from now, you're going to be a super duper well-equipped army taking advantage of all the new technology, and you're still not going to get a drink of water from this river, and you're not going to have a nature hike on the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we'll give you 1,000 years. So he said, basically, the rest of the world, don't worry about the rest of the world. So then he said, what is there to worry about? He said, so at what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, If it ever reaches, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. And that to me is the cool punk rock part about it, because he's basically saying, don't worry about the rest of the world. Don't worry about your fellow Americans. You got to look out for each other. You got to dig the community. The way that we're going to fall is when we abandon each other, when we stop looking out for one another, when we stop being a community and a system of laws, lovers of the Constitution and those obeying the laws, being a nation of laws. And his speech goes on and on, and he points to these recent hangings and all this violence that happened in Missouri. And he said, what's the enemy? It's that. He called it passion. He basically said it's passion, which is just like what he said, rioting in the streets. He said passion has served us well, but it will cease to do so. It will in future be our enemy. Reason, cold, calculating, unimpassive reason should furnish all the materials for our future security and defense, and let these materials mold themselves into general intelligence, sound morality, and especially an obeyance of Constitution and laws. And you can read this speech, it's online, you can download it in a second and read it in about 5 minutes. But to me, he's saying that we have to look out for each other. So I try and strip myself of my cynicism and my contempt for some of my fellow Americans, no matter how cowardly they can be at times. As much as they piss me off, I'm still going to pull them out of the burning wreck. And if they're hungry, even Mr. Graham, if he's hungry and I got a sandwich, he can have at least half of it. Because I disagree with that guy left, right, and center, and I think he's a phony and I think he's a coward. But he's also my fellow American. And that's the damn bitch of democracy, that you got to hang out with these people that you object to. And I liken it to a Phillies Flyers game, in that it's just like elbows to the head, you're getting checked into the board, your mouth guard's flying out of your mouth and you're vomiting blood. But that's us. And in America, I call it a rough room. And that's us. And we don't get along all the time. And the 10th Amendment means there's always going to be state versus federal friction. And so that's our lot, and that's what we've got. Doesn't mean that we can't make things better and get along kind of, sort of, most of the time. And so, like I keep talking about punk rock, I come from Washington, D.C., as you know. The punk rock scene in Washington, D.C. in like 1814, when I was young, you could fit all of us in the back of a Hyundai. I mean, there was hardly any of us at first, and then the thing blew open years later. But at first, it was like, I don't know, 50 cool people who could not hang out anywhere else. And this is where I found my home. Because in high school, I was the kid who didn't fit in, but I understood that music was cool. When I was a very young boy, like 18, 14, when I was a kid, I went to Jackson Elementary School near Georgetown in Washington, D.C. on R Street and 31st, or thereabouts. Some of you have walked by it maybe. It's just a beautiful old school. And in 1967 or 8, when I went there, I was one of like 5 white kids in the whole school. It was my neighborhood, and as you know, Washington, D.C., pretty high contrast, white-black neighborhood. It's getting better now, but in those days, it was demarcated. And so I walked to the school, take about a minute and a half, 3 apartment buildings over, make a left, go into the schoolyard. And more often than not, I'd be surrounded by angry black kids who would push me, put their fists in my face, sometimes slap me or hit me. And no matter how I tried to empty my bladder, as my mom's like, go to the bathroom before you go to school. Okay, Mom. And you do that, and you get to the schoolyard like a minute and a half later, and magically your body has harvested an amazing amount of urine, which will convulsively shoot down your leg, and me wearing the Bermuda shorts. It's just for everyone to see, like, white boys pissing. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Oh, I am. And you